My name is Sarah, and I am 31 years old. I have been happily married to my wonderful husband, John, for 5 years. We have 2 beautiful children, a 3-year-old toddler and a 10-month-old baby. Until recently, our life had been peaceful and fulfilling. John works as a software engineer, while I stay at home to care for our children, a decision we made together, and one I wholeheartedly embraced. About a year ago, John's brother, Mark, returned from living abroad with his wife and kids. Initially, I was thrilled about their return, thinking it would be a great opportunity for the family to reconnect and for our children to bond with their cousins. However, from a very first family gathering after their arrival, something felt off. Mark made me uncomfortable in ways I couldn't quite explain at first. He stared at me inappropriately, stood too close during conversations, and made suggestive comments about my appearance. I am considered conventionally attractive and have a curvy figure, so I am used to receiving unwanted attention. However, I always dress modestly and avoid excessive makeup to prevent drawing too much notice. I believe in dressing appropriately for occasions, wearing elegant attire for weddings and birthday parties, and a swimsuit at the beach. I should have the right to feel comfortable and confident in my own skin without being subjected to inappropriate behavior. Despite my unease, I didn't want to create unnecessary drama, especially since Mark had just reunited with the family. I tried to ignore his behavior, hoping it would stop. When Mark began sending me funny pictures and videos on Messenger, I didn't react much. On the surface, it seemed like a normal thing for a brother-in-law to do, yet it made me uneasy. Eventually, I decided to talk to John about it. John wasn't surprised when I voiced my concerns. He admitted that his brother had always been a bit of a troublemaker and promised to talk to him. John's support was reassuring, but the situation didn't improve. Since Mark and his family live with my in-laws, we see them at least once a month, and every visit filled me with dread. The breaking point came during our last visit. Mark attempted to touch me inappropriately, and John saw it happen. The confrontation that followed was intense. John confronted Mark, and the situation escalated quickly, leading to John pushing Mark before my father-in-law stepped in to separate them. We left their house immediately, the air thick with tension and unresolved anger. Not long after the incident, my mother-in-law visited me at home. I was alone with our toddler and baby when she arrived. She told me that my sister-in-law felt uncomfortable and blamed me for causing trouble within the family. According to her, Mark's behavior might have been inappropriate, but their family had no issues before I entered the picture. She claimed Mark's marriage was now suffering. Her sons were at odds, and everything was falling apart. She demanded that I apologize to my sister-in-law, refrain from attending family gatherings until things calmed down, and encourage John to reconcile with Mark. I felt blindsided and deeply hurt by her accusations. She even threatened that if I told John about our conversation, it would prove that I was enjoying the chaos in their family. Her words left me feeling isolated and confused. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't lie to John, and I didn't want our children to visit their grandparents without me. I felt unfairly blamed for something that wasn't my fault. I believed I had the right to swim in a pool on a hot day and wear a one-piece swimsuit without being accused of inviting unwanted attention. My mother-in-law's claims offended me, and I struggled to balance protecting my dignity, ensuring my family's well-being, and maintaining peace within the extended family. This is where my story begins, as I navigate the challenging dynamics of family conflict, personal boundaries, and the quest to protect my family from inappropriate behavior. Before Mark's return, my life was a blend of tranquility and fulfillment. John and I had built a strong foundation over the 5 years of our marriage. We met through mutual friends, and our relationship quickly blossomed into a deep and meaningful partnership. John was my rock, supportive, loving, and reliable. We made a great team, sharing responsibilities and celebrating each other's successes. Our children brought immeasurable joy into our lives. Our 3-year-old, Emily, was full of energy and curiosity, always eager to explore and learn. Our 10-month-old, Michael, was just beginning to show his personality with bright eyes and an infectious smile. I took great pride in being a stay-at-home mom, ensuring our children grew up in a nurturing and loving environment. Each day was an adventure, filled with small but significant moments that defined parenthood. My confidence was something I had worked hard to build over the years. I knew I was considered attractive, and while this often led to unwanted attention, I had learned to handle it with grace. I dressed modestly, not because I felt the need to hide my body, but because I believed in dressing appropriately for every occasion. Whether at a social event, grocery shopping, or at the beach, I maintained a sense of dignity and self-respect. Before Mark's return, family gatherings were occasions I genuinely looked forward to. John's parents, Susan and Bill, had always been warm and welcoming. We often spent weekends at their house, enjoying barbecues, playing games, and watching the children interact with their grandparents. Susan was particularly fond of Emily and Michael, and her love for them warmed my heart. John's younger sister, Rachel, and her husband were also regular attendees at these gatherings, and our interactions were always pleasant and supportive. The dynamics of our family were harmonious and filled with love. Susan and Bill had a close-knit family and welcomed me with open arms from the very beginning. They appreciated my efforts to maintain family traditions and values, and we shared many memorable moments together. I felt like a valued member of their family, and our interactions were characterized by mutual respect and affection. The peace and harmony in our lives made it easier to navigate any challenges that came our way. John and I communicated openly, resolving conflicts with empathy and understanding. We made decisions together, always prioritizing our children's well-being and the strength of our marriage. Then Mark returned, bringing an unexpected and unwelcome shift. Initially, I remained hopeful that his return would strengthen family bonds. However, from the very first family gathering he attended, I sensed something was off. Mark's behavior toward me was unsettling. He stared for too long, made inappropriate comments about my appearance, and invaded my personal space in ways that felt intrusive. At first, I tried to brush it off, hoping it was just a phase or a misunderstanding. I didn't want to disrupt the family's harmony, especially since everyone was excited about Mark's return. But as time went on, his behavior only became more blatant. He started sending me messages on social media, sharing pictures and videos that made me uneasy. Although they seemed innocent on the surface, they felt wrong. Despite my discomfort, I didn't want to cause a scene. I confided in John, who assured me he would talk to Mark. John acknowledged that Mark had always been difficult, but believed the conversation could set things straight. Unfortunately, the situation only escalated. Family gatherings, once a source of joy, became events I dreaded. The tension reached its peak when Mark crossed a line and attempted to touch me inappropriately. John witnessed it and immediately confronted him. The confrontation was heated, leading to a physical altercation that Bill had to break up. We left in a hurry, the air charged with unresolved anger and hurt. My confidence, which had always been a strength, began to waver. The once harmonious family dynamic was shattered, and I felt isolated and unfairly blamed for a situation I didn't cause. Navigating this new reality required strength and resilience, qualities I had to rediscover within myself for the sake of my family and my well-being. I described the incidents in detail, hoping John would grasp the severity of the situation. He listened intently, his expression growing more serious with each word. When I finished, he let out a deep sigh. "Sarah, I'm so sorry you've had to deal with this. Mark has always been a bit of a jerk, but this is completely unacceptable. I'll talk to him." A wave of relief mixed with apprehension washed over me. John's support meant everything, but I worried about the fallout from confronting Mark. Despite my concerns, I trusted John to handle the situation. I hoped that a conversation between the brothers would be enough to curb Mark's behavior. At the next family gathering, I noticed a shift in the atmosphere. Mark was more reserved, his interactions with me less intrusive. I dare to believe that John's talk had made an impact. However, the relief was short-lived. As months passed, Mark's behavior gradually returned to its previous level of inappropriateness. At a dinner party hosted by John's parents, Mark resumed his habit of standing too close and making suggestive remarks. "That color suits you, Sarah. Really brings out your eyes," he murmured, his tone laced with innuendo. A wave of anger and unease twisted in my stomach. It became painfully clear that Mark had no intention of changing, despite John's intervention. As time went on, the situation worsened. Mark's actions escalated, and I found myself constantly on edge, making every effort to avoid being alone with him. I confided in John again, expressing my frustration and fear. He reassured me that he would speak to Mark once more, but the lack of tangible change left me feeling helpless and vulnerable. The tension reached a boiling point at a family event when Mark attempted to touch me inappropriately. John witnessed the incident, and a heated confrontation erupted, culminating in John shoving Mark before their father intervened. The conflict was a stark reminder that Mark's behavior was not just an annoyance, but a serious violation of my boundaries and safety. As we left the event, the weight of the unresolved tension hung heavy in the air. I felt trapped in a cycle of discomfort and fear, unsure of how to protect myself and my family from Mark's predatory behavior. Once harmonious family gatherings had become a source of dread, and I knew something had to change. The incident occurred at a family barbecue, an event that should have been filled with joy and laughter. The setting sun cast a golden glow over the backyard as the scent of grilled food lingered in the air. I was helping Susan in the kitchen, preparing a salad, when Mark walked in. His presence instantly put me on edge, but I focused on my task. As the evening progressed, I kept my distance, wary of his past behavior. I stood near the grill, chatting with Rachel about Emily's latest antics, when I suddenly felt a hand on my lower back. I stiffened, hoping it was accidental, but then the hand slid down and grabbed me. I spun around to see Mark, a smug grin on his face. A surge of anger and disgust erupted within me. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I snapped, my voice shaking. John, who was just a few feet away, saw everything. His expression darkened with fury as he stormed over. "What the hell, Mark?" he bellowed, shoving his brother away from me. "Keep your hands off my wife." Mark stumbled back, his grin fading into a scowl. "Oh, come on, John. It was just a joke. Don't be so uptight." John was livid. "That wasn't a joke, Mark. That was assault. Stay the hell away from Sarah." The commotion drew the family's attention. Susan and Bill rushed over, attempting to calm their sons. "What's going on here?" Bill demanded, looking between John and Mark. John pointed at Mark, his voice trembling with rage. "He grabbed Sarah. He's been making her uncomfortable for months, and now he's crossed a line." Susan looked horrified, while Bill's expression turned stern. "Is this true, Mark?" Mark shrugged, trying to downplay the situation. "It was nothing. Sarah's overreacting." Tears welled in my eyes. The sense of violation was overwhelming. I had endured his inappropriate behavior for too long, and now he had escalated to physical assault. The shock and anger coursed through me, mingling with a deep sense of betrayal. This was supposed to be my family, too, a place where I felt safe and respected. John stood by me unwaveringly, wrapping a protective arm around me. His voice softened. "Are you okay, Sarah?" I nodded, though my hands still trembled. "I just want to go home." We left the barbecue in tense silence, the atmosphere heavy with unresolved anger. As we drove home, I couldn't hold back my tears. "I can't believe he did that," I whispered, my voice breaking. John reached over and squeezed my hand. "I'm so sorry, Sarah. I should have done more to stop this sooner. I'll make sure he never touches you again." The emotional impact hit me hard. I felt violated, exposed, my sense of security shattered. The backyard, once a place of happy memories, now felt tainted. The sensation of Mark's hand on my body lingered, a constant reminder of his disrespect and entitlement. Over the following days, tension within the family escalated. Mark's actions became the subject of heated discussions. Some, like Rachel and her husband, supported John and me, condemning Mark's behavior. Others, including Susan and Bill, seemed more concerned about the rift forming between their sons. A few days after the incident, Susan visited me. I was at home with Emily and Michael, trying to keep them entertained while processing the turmoil. When she knocked on the door, anxiety tightened my chest. Her unannounced visits rarely brought good news, especially after the recent conflict. "Hi, Susan." I greeted her, forcing a neutral tone. "Come in." She stepped inside, her expression a mix of concern and determination. She glanced at the kids in the living room before turning to me. Sarah, we need to talk. I led her to the kitchen and offered her a seat at the table. What's this about? I asked, though I already had a sinking feeling. She took a deep breath. It's about what happened at the barbecue. Rachel has been feeling very uncomfortable since then. I blinked in surprise. Rachel? What does she have to do with this? She feels caught in the middle, Susan explained. The conflict between Mark and John is affecting her relationship with Mark. Frustration bubbled up inside me. Susan, with all due respect, Rachel's discomfort isn't the main issue. Mark crossed a serious boundary. He assaulted me. Susan nodded slowly but held her ground. I understand, but the way things are escalating is tearing this family apart. Mark's marriage is suffering, and my sons are at odds. We had no problems before you came along. Her words felt like a slap. Are you saying this is my fault? Susan sighed. I'm not blaming you entirely, but your presence and how things have been handled are contributing to the discord. I spoke with Rachel, and she feels you might be overreacting. Maybe Mark was being inappropriate, but she thinks you should try to move past it for the sake of the family. Anger flared inside me. How can you expect me to just move past this? Mark didn't just make a comment. He physically touched me without consent. That's not something I can ignore. Susan's expression hardened. I'm asking you to consider the bigger picture, Sarah. I want you to apologize to Rachel for making her uncomfortable and avoid family gatherings for a while. Let things calm down. I stared at her in disbelief. You want me to apologize? For what? For being a victim? I made up my mind to have an open and honest conversation with John that evening. I couldn't allow this family conflict to shake my principles or diminish my self-respect. Together, we would figure out a way to handle this challenging situation, supporting one another and pushing back against the unjust expectations placed upon us. After Susan left, I sat at the kitchen table, my thoughts swirling in a storm of emotions. The conversation had left me feeling deeply torn. Her demands felt unreasonable and unfair, yet they came with a threat that made my stomach twist. If I refused to comply, I would be blamed for the family discord, and Susan would ensure John believed I was reveling in the turmoil. The mere thought of deceiving John felt like a betrayal of the trust and honesty that formed the foundation of our marriage. We had always been open with each other, sharing our fears, frustrations, and aspirations. Keeping Susan's conversation a secret felt inherently wrong, yet I couldn't ignore the potential consequences of defying her. The fear of being accused of breaking apart the family weighed heavily on my mind. I glanced at Emily and Michael playing innocently in the living room, and my protective instincts flared. As a mother, my top priority was their safety and well-being. Mark's behavior posed a direct risk to that. Avoiding family gatherings could shield them from his inappropriate actions, but it would also mean distancing myself and my children from the rest of the family. They deserved to bond with their grandparents, but not at the cost of their security or my peace of mind. As I pondered the situation, I couldn't ignore my sense of self-worth. Allowing Mark's actions to go unchallenged would mean accepting disrespect and violation as a part of my life. It would mean placing family harmony above my dignity and safety. I had fought hard to build my confidence and self-respect, and I refused to sacrifice that simply to avoid conflict. The internal struggle was agonizing. On one hand, I wanted to protect my children while maintaining some semblance of family unity. On the other hand, the mere thought of apologizing for being a victim or urging John to reconcile with Mark made me feel sick. I deserved to feel safe and valued, and so did my children. I replayed Susan's words in my mind, tried to find a way to navigate the situation without compromising my principles. She wanted me to apologize to Rachel and stay away from family gatherings. She also expected me to persuade John to make amends with Mark. Every demand felt like a betrayal of my integrity and the values I held dear. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. Giving in to Susan's expectations wouldn't resolve the real problem. It would only enable Mark's behavior and erode my self-respect. I had to stand my ground, for myself, for my children, and for what was right. I couldn't let fear and manipulation dictate my choices. Finally, I decided to have an open conversation with John. I needed his support and understanding to navigate this ordeal. Together, we could find a way to protect our family without sacrificing our values. I took a deep breath, determined to talk to him as soon as he got home. When John walked in that evening, I could see the exhaustion in his eyes. He had been dealing with the fallout from his confrontation with Mark, and I knew this conversation wouldn't be easy, but it was necessary. I had to trust that our relationship was strong enough to withstand this challenge. "John, we need to talk," I said softly, leading him to the living room. I took a deep breath and recounted my conversation with Susan, leaving nothing out. I watched his expression shift from confusion to anger, then settle into firm determination. "She had no right to demand that of you," John said, his voice steady. "You did nothing wrong, Sarah. Mark's behavior is the real problem, not you." A wave of relief washed over me at his words. "I can't apologize for something I didn't do, John. And I can't lie to you or avoid family gatherings just to keep the peace." John nodded. "We'll face this together. I'll talk to my parents again and make it clear that we won't tolerate Mark's behavior or any attempts to blame you for it." At that moment, I felt a renewed sense of strength and resolve. We were a team, and together, we would protect our family and stand up for what was right. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I knew we could navigate it with honesty, courage, and mutual support. With our decision firmly in place, John and I devised a plan to address the situation head-on. We knew it would be difficult, but it was necessary to ensure our well-being and peace of mind. John arranged a meeting with his parents, Susan and Bill. We decided to approach them together, presenting a united front. When we arrived at their home, the tension was heavy in the air. Susan looked uneasy, while Bill seemed resigned to the conversation. John and I sat down with them, and he started speaking, his tone calm but resolute. "Mom, Dad, we need to talk about what happened with Mark and the expectations you place on Sarah," he began. Susan sighed, but John continued before she could interrupt. "Mark's actions were unacceptable. He crossed a line, and we won't tolerate it. Sarah did nothing wrong, and it's unfair to hold her responsible for the family discord." Bill nodded slowly. "We understand that Mark's behavior was inappropriate, but this conflict is tearing the family apart." I took a deep breath and spoke up. "We want to maintain a relationship with the family, but we need to set clear boundaries to ensure everyone's safety and well-being. We can't ignore what happened or pretend everything is fine." Susan looked conflicted, but nodded. "What do you suggest?" "We suggest that Mark stay away from family gatherings for a while," John said. "This will give everyone time to process things and address the real issues. If he does attend in the future, there need to be clear boundaries in place to ensure his behavior is appropriate." Bill looked thoughtful. "That seems fair. We'll talk to Mark and make it clear that his actions won't be tolerated." With that part of the plan in motion, John and I reached out to Rachel and her husband. We invited them over to discuss the situation, hoping to clear the air and find common ground. Rachel arrived looking wary but open to listening. "Rachel, we understand this has been difficult for you," I began, "but it's important you hear the full story. Mark's actions have made me feel unsafe, and we need to address them." Rachel nodded slowly. "I didn't realize it was that bad, Sarah. I'm sorry if I seemed unsupportive." "We appreciate that," John said. "We just want to make sure everyone understands the seriousness of the situation and supports the necessary boundaries." Rachel agreed to speak with Mark as well, reinforcing the message that his behavior was unacceptable and needed a change. Having her support felt like a step in the right direction. To ensure our children's safety, John and I decided that family gatherings would now take place in our home, where we had more control over the environment. We also established firm rules. Mark would not be invited unless he demonstrated genuine change and respect for boundaries. As time passed, we saw gradual improvements. Susan and Bill respected our boundaries, and Rachel's support helped ease tensions. While Mark didn't change overnight, our actions ensured that our family felt safer and more united. Standing up for ourselves took strength, courage, and unwavering support from one another. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Through open communication, setting firm boundaries, and prioritizing our well-being, we created a healthier, safer environment for ourselves and our children. Over time, the conflict with Mark reached a resolution. With clear boundaries and the support of our loved ones, Mark was held accountable. He eventually apologized and agreed to seek counseling to address his behavior. While rebuilding trust would take time, the immediate threat was resolved, allowing our family to begin healing.